So, what do you guys do? A sunny-haired boy asked with his eyes looking up and counting the clouds. Next to him, a red-haired boy and a dark blue-haired girl tilted their heads. The blonde boy would often speak and break the mind-numbing silence in the group, and as a result, both of his companions kept a slight distance from him, afraid of being called out. The girl was introverted, while the red-haired boy wasn't used to being talked to ever since a few weeks ago. After being ignored for so long, he developed a bad expectations from others. He expected them to ignore him no matter what he does. Sometimes, he would wonder what will happen if he painted the village in vibrant colors. Will the black and white cave he lives in turn into a rainbow castle? When the blonde heard no response, he turned and looked at the two, raising his eyebrow. So, what do you mean? The red-haired boy asked, making the blonde smile. What do you guys do when you're bored? Oh, the red-haired boy nodded his head in enlightenment. I like to read books, he said, and the blonde boy looked at him with doubt. Really? Who likes to read books? When he asked the question, the red-haired boy looked at him as if he was dumb. Me. I like to read. Me too, the only girl in the group chimed in. Seeing that he was outnumbered, the blonde boy grumbled in defeat. Well, you guys like to read all right. I like to run around when I'm bored. Feeling challenged, the red-haired boy crossed his arms. When you read, you get more knowledge and you become relaxed. What about running? What's so fun about running? The other boy shrugged. It's fun just because. When he let out a sigh, the blonde boy looked at him and said, You sigh like an old man. When you grow older, your face will be all wrinkly like. Naruto's brows twitched. And this guy is so blunt. Too blunt. We're here. When the girl spoke, we both turned to look in front of us, and as the girl said, they'd arrived at a bakery named Hana Pan. After bidding goodbye to the girl, the blonde also said his goodbye. Watching the two kids blend into the crowd, I felt an ache in my chest. A bit of time later, I turned to walk toward my apartment, but my feet were clinging to the ground like an unwilling puppy. In the end, I chose to roam the village for a bit and kill some time. Oh right, I was supposed to buy some first aid kit. Well, I suppose I didn't lie. As I walk in the streets, the crowd opened a path for the pariah while muttering behind his back. Why? Why do you do this? I can hear you, you know I can. The villagers didn't say anything hateful. They'd only whisper, Look, it's him, he's here, it's that kid, or something similar, and then stare at me with those less than M greater than those less than M greater than eyes. It was like they were looking at a dirty rat or a feral dog rather than a person. Is it because of my hair and whiskers? When the thought dawned on me, I ran to the nearest alleyway. Then, I took out the shirt underneath my light brown jumpsuit and tore it apart, wrapping it around my face and head to act as a mask and hood. I was shaking and fidgeting when I left the dark alley, but when I saw that they didn't look at me with less than M greater than those less than M greater than eyes anymore, I realized that my guess was correct. They shunned me because of my hair and whiskers. I need to buy a mask. I went to the nearest shop that sold masks, but when I saw their exorbitant price tags, I nearly threw them to the ground. Luckily, my hands were still trembling from nervousness, and didn't break them, lest I had to pay and get nothing in return. Yes, I can buy them if I use up all my money, but what about my food? I'd rather buy a fishing rod instead. Walking away in disappointment, I looked around and saw a shop that sold first aid kits, bandages, and other medical supplies. Hey, mister, I shouted, attracting the attention of the shop owner. He looked around before looking down, surprised that it was me who called. What can I do for you? The man asked with a skeptical tone. He wasn't that old, maybe just a teenager judging from his voice and his youthful face. He would have started chirping about his products by now if he was experienced, but it seems my expertise is a bit higher than this greenhorn. I had to haggle for hours just to buy a couple of meat and vegetables. It'll take you a while before you surpass me. How much is this first aid kit? I pointed at a set of medical supplies with the label, Bundle Discount, Basic First Aid. Oh. It costs 500 ryo. But for you, I'll sell it for 450, the man said. He dropped the price by a bit when I showed him my puppy eyes, but I knew I can make him sell it for lower. Just look at those hesitating eyes, so indecisive and pitiful. Don't blame me, blame those cunning merchants who taught me a rough, real-life lesson. After saying my apologies inside my head, I sighed sadly and lowered my head, taking out my purse and counting around 300 ryo out loud. Then, I mutter under my breath, "Oh, I'm a little short. But I really need that." Sure enough, the man hesitated for a while before saying, "If you're short of money, you can come back later and give me the rest." Naturally, I ignore him. "Hey, mister," I said in a sweet tone and looked up with my eyes watering and glossy, "won't you sell it to me for 400? "Sorry kid. I can't sell it for lower than 450, my dad will punish me," so he says, but his brows were furrowing a little, and his lips were twitching. "Ah, this won't work," I thought as a teardrop fell from my eyes and I secretly glanced at another merchant who was watching. The latter noticed my gaze and chuckled. "If my own power is not enough, then I'll ask for help. Behold, the power of bullying. Cough. I mean, the power of friendship." "How stingy," the merchant muttered under his breath. I and the teenager could barely hear him, but that made the effect better. The teenager's ears twitched, and he glanced behind him only to see the merchant turn to look away. When he looked back at me, the merchant mumbled something again, but this time, we couldn't interpret what he was saying. But it didn't matter because the teenager was starting to fidget and become anxious, judging by his action of rubbing his fingers. "You really don't have money," the teenager said while thinking. "I'll just explain it to my father. What if I damage the shop's image if I don't sell it?" He could still hear the neighboring merchant muttering under his breath, and even though he couldn't understand him, his mind was forming gloomy sentences such as, "What a heartless guy, no one would buy from that shop anymore," and, "How cruel." If Naruto were to hear his thoughts, he would think that the teenager was a thin-faced person. The truth was the merchant was just mumbling incoherent words, but his tone was purposefully manipulated to seem mocking and degrading, making the teenager form such baseless thoughts. "No. I only have 350 ryo with me," I say, but when I saw his face turn ugly, I realized that I asked for too much. "Ah, look, I have another." Before I could even finish, he started putting the first aid kit in a paper bag. "You only have 350. Don't worry. Since I just opened, I'll give you a 150 ryo discount. Here you go." The teenager handed me the paper bag. When I accepted it, I didn't forget to look at him with glee and appreciation. "Thank you very much, mister," I said before running away, but not before winking at the merchant who helped me. The merchant chuckled and waved his hand before burying his head into an orange book. Come to think of it, the kind librarian from before was also reading that orange book. I wonder what it's about. I was lost in thought when I saw something in the corner of my eye. It was bottles of ink and stacks of paper. "Hello. Please give me 1 bottle of ink and a stack of paper." The man behind the stall wrapped the paper and ink in a paper bag. 200 ryo, he said, and after I gave him the money, he handed me the paper bag. Although I would haggle for a first aid kit and other things, when it comes to things related to Fuinjutsu and training, I won't be stingy. Satisfied with the outing, I headed toward a familiar alleyway that led straight to my apartment. Whoosh. Suddenly, a man wearing a blank, white mask appeared behind me. After firming my resolve to join the Root Anbu division, I was left both relieved and anxious. "Shina, Yuto, how is your day today?" Every time I open the door to my house, I mutter these words and wait as my wife and child come up to me and hug me as if we've been apart for a year when really, we've only been apart for a day. I worked as a chunin guard, guarding the village walls in the evening and only returning from work in the morning. That was before, and now. Creaak. As I open the door, I utter the words I'd been repeating for years. "Shina, Yuto, I'm home. How are the two of you? Did you eat last night?" Yes, I ate the food you cooked for me, Shina." "Hold on. Let me take a bath first, and let's talk over lunch." "Ah, Yuto. Don't run around too much. This little boy, what if you trip? After walking into the bathroom and taking a bath, I changed into my civilian clothes and went to the dining room. It was empty. Sheena, what happened? Are you feeling sick? Don't worry, I'll cook lunch today, you don't have to overwork yourself. Yes, don't worry, mommy is fine. Yuto, smiling at my son below me, I walked to the refrigerator and took out some chicken and some vegetables. Talk. 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 As the sounds of cutting echoed out in the kitchen, I hummed while listening to Sheena and Yuto's voices. Yuto, what about your school? When I asked that question, everything went silent. Sizzle. After sautéing the garlic and onions, I looked back to the living room. Did something happen at school today, Yuto? Why are you suddenly quiet? Don't tell me. My tone turned cooler as I waited for Yuto's answer. As expected, scaring him works all the time. I see, so you were scolded at school today for not paying attention to class. Well, what should you do next time? Yes, you should listen to your teacher more. That's our Yuto, learning from his mistakes. Do you want something for lunch? I'll cook it for you if it's not too hard to prepare. To be honest, my cooking skills were only average, and my wife's cooking is like heaven compared to mine, but the taste of home made it special. You want some fried rice? Okay, that's easy. Wait for a moment and lunch will be ready. Clang. 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 As the sounds of plates hitting the table rang out, I called Yuto to help me prepare the table. When everything was placed on the table, I went to the couch and helped Sheena walk to the dining room. With one hand holding her waist and the other holding her hand, I gently guided her to the dining room. Don't worry, I'll call for a medical ninja after lunch. Just stay at home and rest, I whispered to Sheena, although I have a guess as to what might have happened. It wasn't bad, but rather it was a joyous event, so I'll have to ask for a 9-month leave from ninja work. I already saved up enough money just for this day, so there was no need to worry about financial problems. Even if we spent extravagantly for 2 years, we'd still have enough money to live for another year if we stayed frugal, much less now that I'm only leaving work for 9 months. Suddenly, I heard Yuto ask why I was smiling so much. I turned to look at the chair in front of my and Sheena's chair. Yuto, when you become an older brother, will you protect your baby sibling? I asked and watched as he puffed his chest with a massive grin on his face. Of course, I'm super cool and strong, after all, I mumble at the same time as he muttered those words, making him look at me with confusion. I laugh and wave him off, silently looking at Sheena, who was quietly eating with a flushed face after realizing the hidden comment behind my question. Sheena, I whisper, have you thought of names yet? Sheena chuckled and told me to be patient, and I faithfully do so. Suddenly, I remembered something. The fourth was a little fidgety today when I saw him. Then, I heard him mumble, October 10th. What do you think will happen tomorrow? Tomorrow is October 10th, after all. All of a sudden, the room went silent again. Sheena. I looked at Sheena, but she didn't look back at me. However, I clearly saw blood dripping from her face. I was about to leave when I heard no reply. Flustered, I looked at Yuto's seat and saw that just like Sheena, he was looking down with blood flowing from his face. Yuto. Damned it. Don't worry, I'll quickly call a medical ninja, I promised and dashed out of the door. Bang. When the door to our house slammed open, the villagers on the streets jumped and turned to look at me and the empty house behind me, muttering to each other with pity written on their faces. When I saw those pitying eyes, everything clicked in my mind like a puzzle finally put together after finding the missing piece for too long. Again. Sheena. Yuto. I'm so sorry. While muttering some scattered words, I slowly drifted around the streets. Suddenly, I saw a streak of red hair. Red hair. Red hair. Red hair. A sentence appeared in my mind. The boy with blood red hair and whiskers is the one housing the nine-tailed. Recalling that sentence, my fingers cooled like an ice block and a blank mask appeared on my face. 9 tails. I growled, looking at the alleyway that the boy entered with infinite malice.